Rip City Mornings.
Our next guest, senior college football writer for ESPN. He was down in Corvallis. He has been making the rounds around the Pac-12 this spring, and very happy to welcome back to the big show, Adam Rittenberg. Adam, good morning to you. How's it going?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me. Doing great.
I want to get into your profile you wrote on DJU and talk about Oregon State and Oregon, but obviously the news this week around the college football world has been Colorado. And just curious, because you are somebody that obviously lives on the internet. You live on Twitter. You news breaks. You got to throw it out. How much of your time has been taken up of the growing number of transfer portal players that have come from Colorado these last couple of days?
Yeah, it's been a lot. I mean, certainly the story on Monday was just the number of players who went in the portal coming off of the spring. And maybe I underestimated that would be the time that we would see this surge. You obviously had some last week, even before spring practice was done. But what a number that really almost 40 players, and maybe over 40 players in the portal since the middle of April. And, this it shouldn't be a huge shock for those who have listened to Deion Sanders and been around the program. He's been very clear that there will be major changes in terms of the roster, but to see it unfold is it's striking. It's not normal. Now the portal is new, and you couldn't do this a few years ago, but they are using that portal in a way that we really haven't seen a team be this invested in it. And so it'll be interesting to see who comes back. We've already seen a few players that have committed. We're going to see a lot more this weekend, I'm told. And into the month of May, guys either going into the portal or guys that have been in the portal who announced they're going to play for the Buffs next year. And then we do the analysis. Then we really evaluate what the two deep is going to look like, because I think the one thing that I would say, they may be underestimating there in Colorado is just attrition. And are they going to have enough bodies to handle the inevitable injuries, especially if they hit a certain position group? I think that's where I don't see right now, as we speak today, enough Pac-12 quality players in the portal to backfill all these spots, but that could certainly change. And they've had their plans all along to go this route.
Usually when you see a lot of players heading into the portal, that's doom and gloom for a program. But I wonder, is it different for Colorado? Because Adam, they were 1-11. I mean, there are a lot of players that probably a lot of Colorado fans did not want to continue playing there in Boulder. Is there when you look at it, was this more indicative of Deion and this coaching staff cleaning house, or is this, hey, a lot of big mass exodus? I know I saw a couple of players who were like, no, I didn't want to leave. I was cut, which is an interesting way of putting it. We saw, I think, Herm Edwards try to make like NFL style, decisions at Arizona State. That didn't work out so well. Now Deion Sanders essentially having a spring game and a cut day, which is something kind of new in college football. Or is that one of those things that always kind of happened? We just didn't hear about it so abrupt.
Right. I think it always happened. I don't think you heard it in the way that it's unfolding in Colorado with the numbers of players. Now, I've talked to a few players who entered the portal in this last wave, and certainly not all of them were cut. Some of them chose to enter on their own, position switch, just wasn't working out, wanted a different environment. One thing that I will say is it seems like players are very trying to almost go out of their way to say, well, it wasn't Deion's fault. Like, I'm almost afraid of Deion, even going out the door, which is I found kind of interesting. But you're seeing. I talked to a player whose position coach called him in last week and basically said, yeah, you should go in the portal. And that's, again, not what we're used to in college football, but it has happened before. It will continue to happen. It'll be interesting to see what the fallout is at Colorado specifically, because, you technically can't force a player to go into the portal because of the scholarship agreements. I wonder if there's going to be some pushback on the parts of some of the players, or if there'll be an adjustment going forward. But clearly Deion Sanders, you wonder if these players were really given a fair shot to prove themselves, or whether this was always going to happen right now, the roster overhaul that's taking place in Boulder.
Adam Rittenberg, senior college football writer for ESPN, joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. One more thing on this, a little bit about Colorado, but more on just, Adam, college football in general, because as you mentioned, and we seem to talk about this every time you come on the show, which we're very appreciative of, just kind of the new normals in college football and looking into the future. We don't quite know exactly a way to forecast it. I know there is that new provision where essentially you can cut players as long as you honor their scholarship for new coaches. USC did it last year with Lincoln Riley, but their number was 10, and Dion's number is over 40. Do you look into maybe the future, and this is an unfair question, but do you see more and more coaches, especially new coaches, taking over bad programs, kind of going this route, essentially cleaning house in year one?
Well, it depends if it works. USC certainly they did have success last year, but they also are a historical blue blood program that's able to attract players from all around the country, and they're located in an area where there are a lot of elite recruits. Colorado has had some national success, but not at the level of USC. Nor are they located in a great area for recruits just regionally and locally. So, yeah, I think some coaches might take this approach. I think a lot of coaches are frustrated by what's happening at Colorado and think that Dion should be investigated and all this. I'm getting those messages every day. We'll see if anything comes of it. But I still think though there's some resistance to going this direction completely. But if Colorado wins 9 games next year and contends for the Pac-12, your coaches are going to replicate. That's what they've done since the beginning of the sport, is replicate schemes, replicate philosophies, and replicate personnel approaches, which is something certainly to keep watching here after what's happened at Colorado.
Adam Rittenberg, from senior college football writer from ESPN, joining us on 620 Rip City Radio. And you have been obviously on a West Coast swing, Adam. You were down there in Corvallis. You wrote a profile piece on DJ Uiagalelei making his move out here to the West Coast. I got to start with this, Adam, because never thought and understand. I went to Western Oregon University, which is about 16 miles north of Corvallis. So I've spent a good chunk of time in Corvallis. Never did I think Corvallis would be referred to as a bigger college town than somewhere else, as you put in your story. But I've never been to Clemson. I got to imagine it's got to be nuts. One, just being a Clemson football player in that kind of small town environment, but also being the quarterback. But I didn't think that Corvallis would be the place to escape for anonymity, the big metropolis that it is.
Right. It's not the biggest place, but it is bigger than Clemson. Is really a fishbowl. I mean, when you go there, it is, you're almost stunned at how small it is. And obviously, having an elite football program there, makes it hard for those players to have any sort of anonymity. I'll have a bigger story on DJ coming out, later on in May, but it was good to visit with him. He is a real great guy. And I think that's something that certainly comes through when you're with him, even though he was an elite recruit and had all these NIL deals and was the Clemson quarterback. I don't think he's lost who he is. And I think he's a guy that's fit in well at Oregon State, which, as you know, is a program where big egos die. I mean, you could not have a big ego at Oregon State and expect to have success. That's just not part of who they are, especially with Jonathan Smith as the coach. And I think DJ has blended in well and enjoyed, being in Corvallis. I mean, he picked the school without even setting foot on campus. He'd been to Oregon, obviously, as a recruit back in 2019. His brother's there now, but this is the one. We did a list of possible destinations when DJ entered the portal in early December, and Oregon State was actually my favorite option for him. I didn't know if he would go there. I obviously wasn't in regular communication as far as what he wanted, but now in talking with him, it really does check a lot of the boxes that he's seeking to improve his chances of getting to the NFL. And so, I know there's a lot made of what he said about Clemson, but I think he's also really excited to learn this offense and to, do some of the things that he wanted to do throughout his college career, but maybe we're not as big of an emphasis at Clemson as they certainly will be at Oregon State.
It is fascinating, Adam, because everything that DJU has talked about, and I think The comments he made about Clemson's offense, I think, was a little bit overblown. Shocker that us in the media would make a mountain out of a molehill, but it was clearly was not a good fit personality-wise and scheme-wise. And when you think about where he's coming to now, it's going to be an interesting transition because and Oregon State fans hate it when I do this, Adam, but making the comparison to Bo Nix. Well, he came in with Kenny Dillingham. He knew the offense inside and out before he stepped foot in Eugene. This is going to be, I think, a different type of transfer because, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, this is almost a world apart from the offense he was running at Clemson, what Jonathan Smith runs in Corvallis.
Right, and that's what he wanted. I mean, when he was looking at potential destination, he told me he wanted to break the huddle. He wanted to be under center. He wanted to run play action. He wanted to throw the ball downfield. He doesn't want to run as much. I was talking with an ACC head coach about that earlier this week. The coach was like, "Why is he running so much? You're 250 pounds and you got a huge arm. That guy should be flinging it 50 yards downfield in that type of an offense." And so this is what DJ wanted, but I brought this up to Jonathan, which is interesting. DJ's big point to me was this will allow me to play free. I can be myself here, but this is a more complex offense to learn. And Jonathan said, yeah, we put a lot on the quarterback. And he's going to have to learn to make those checks and do all those things at the line of scrimmage and read defenses in a different way. And he's working with, a receiving core that, at least from a recruiting standpoint, is not as talented as the one that he had at Clemson. He's got a great running back, obviously, and Damian Martinez. Their whole depth at running back is outstanding, and that's going to help whoever the quarterback is. But this is going to be a bit of a learning curve. And there's quarterbacks that are doing that around the country. Sam Hartman, who had incredible success at Wake Forest. I talked with him a few weeks ago on campus at Notre Dame about learning that offense, which is very different from what Wake Forest runs. But, this is what DJ wanted. He could have gone to a lot of places. He wanted this offense that Jonathan Smith and Brian Lindgren operate, even though it is a lot for a quarterback to pick up and absorb. And so that's what's going to be fun to watch is whether he can execute it successfully, because if he can, I think his chances of succeeding in the NFL certainly will go up.
Adam Rittenberg, senior college football writer for ESPN, joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. Obviously, down the road, there was another transfer quarterback a year ago that kind of had some of the same circumstances, right? Bo Nix was at Auburn. Difference is he was a legacy guy at Auburn, and obviously a ton of expectations. Coaching changed, some injuries, and he got a fresh start at Oregon, made the most of it last year, and then came, I thought, an interesting decision. We've talked about it a ton on this show, Adam, about how NIL can really put a decision, especially for quarterbacks. Would you rather be a 4th round, 5th round pick in the NFL, or would you rather stay on campus, make some NIL depending on the school you go to, and have a chance ultimately to win a championship as opposed to being Joe Burrow's backup? Bo Nix comes back, and it seems as though this is one of those circumstances where he just came to Eugene, got out of the pressure cooker that was at Auburn, and really just seems to be enjoying his time.
He really is. And I think that, this is something that an NFL offensive coordinator told me recently, that, the one benefit of NIL is going to be college football is going to have more quarterbacks like Bo Nix who stick around. Maybe prior to NIL coming into effect, those guys would have been gone to the NFL, even if they, were day 3 for sure draft picks. I'm not saying that's for sure for Bo, but his name wasn't going to be called tonight. So, for him, being at Oregon, the NIL benefits, having a chance to compete for a championship, and really enjoying himself. I mean, this is a guy who, was at Auburn, and I would say had a mostly rocky time there, and a mostly unenjoyable time there. I don't know if he would say that, but it just seemed like that from the outside, given the expectations of being Patrick Nix's son and the dysfunction that often is present at Auburn University. Now he's at Oregon, had a tremendous season last year. It didn't end up with a Pac-12 championship, so there's some goals out there for him as a team to achieve. There's obviously goals individually. He wasn't, among the top vote getters for the Heisman. If he has another great season, that could certainly change for Bo. And, he just seems very much happy and excited to be back with Oregon. He's excited to run this offense again. He told me he wants as much freedom as possible, almost like Peyton Manning, to call the game on the field at the line of scrimmage. That's how much knowledge he has. And Will Stein, their offensive coordinator, told me it's like having an NFL player out there. Now, I am still a coach, and he's the player, and we're going to work together on this scheme, but it's a little bit different than, a new quarterback or someone who's just learning. Bo Nix knows a lot and wants to compete and really, really wants to run the offense from the field. So it's going to be fun to watch him this year.
You can follow him on Twitter at ESPN Rittenberg. You can read his stuff at ESPN.com. Senior college football writer for ESPN, Adam Rittenberg. Hey, Adam, thanks so much for the time. Hope you enjoyed your time here in the Pacific Northwest. Sorry you kind of got out before the weather turned. Like, it's going to be beautiful this weekend. It looks like your trip to Eugene, you got that April Oregon weather.
I took a 90-minute walk foolishly without an umbrella. It's beautiful at Oregon. I wanted to see the campus. I wanted to see Hayward Field and all the renovated facilities. I absorbed a lot of water on that walk. So I'm glad that for Oregon and for all of you guys that the weather has turned. But that was a rough week weather-wise out there.